Hi everyone, Adrian from Audio Excellence Canada. Vilip is either late or not coming, so we're going to start this video just because it's Saturday and we have to open at 10. So I'll do this video first, and I'll get Angus and Alex to chime in as we go along. So today's video is we answer your questions. So Alex posted a video, or not video, but a YouTube blurb asking for your questions, and we thank you very much for your questions. We got a lot of them. We won't be able to get to every one of them, but we might keep some of them and do a follow-up video the next time. So again, thank you very much for that. So first question from Ralph Persillo. If I pronounce your names wrong, I apologize. I have the Bluesound Node Hegel H95 and the Magnepan LRS speakers. What speaker cables do you recommend? Nordos, comma, if so, which model? And what digital cable? By far the best audiophile system that I have owned. Thanks for the recommendation. Okay, so normally I would suggest that Vilip give the answer because Vilip and Angus and Alex do much more of the everyday meeting with clients, and so as a result they have more intimate experience these days with putting systems together and so on than I do. But as a general rule, I love Nordos for its articulation, detail, clarity, speed. So if you want to continue that, it sounds like Vilip might be here. Angus, can you go make sure that he locks the door as well? So as a general rule, if you like articulation and those kinds of things, Nordos is a great cable to look at. As far as speaker cables, the Blue Heaven is a fantastic cable for the money. The other thing I really like about Nordos is that they're so flexible. Unlike other cables, AudioQuest, which are great cables, but they're such a pain to work with. Now in the store, at home, you hook it up and that's it. In the store, we're constantly moving cables, moving systems. So, solid core cables are a bit of a pain to work with. So I would suggest for this particular match, maybe the Blue Heaven, and similarly with the digital cable as well. Okay. Drew Robertson, recently you did an unboxing of an Italian amp Pathos. I'm sure you've had, was that Vilip? I'm sure you've had enough time to burn it in. How does it sound? Will you, come on in Vilip, will you be distributors or not? I am very interested to hear your take on it. I would also like to hear what Angus has to say about it. This would be a great time to put him in the vacant chair. Also, do you all have any plans to check out Plinius? They are an amp manufacturer from New Zealand, I believe. Thanks. So, Vilip just joined us. Good morning, Vilip.
Good morning.
Can you guys hear him? Volume is okay?
Let me just cough a bit. Cough a bit.
Don't cough into the mic. So we're doing the Q&A video first. So
I didn't do it. It's not my fault.
Drew Robertson is asking about the Italian Pathos. Have we had enough time to burn it in, and how does it sound? So our distributor friend Richard is also the distributor for Pathos. As a matter of fact, I believe he brought in Pathos something like 20 some odd years ago. And many years ago, I actually did carry Pathos. We haven't actually had a chance to break in the big one, the Inpol Mark II. It's just starting to break in right now, so stay tuned. We will follow up with.
Yeah, we put about maybe 40 or 50 hours on it, maybe.
Yeah, so we'll follow up with the review. As far as Plinius, many years ago, I did in fact hear some. I was never a dealer, so that was a long time ago, and I couldn't tell you what they sound like these days. Vilip, any thoughts about Plinius?
They got really good transformers.
Is that right?
And it's brought in by our other really good friend.
Yeah.
So Lily does bring it in.
Yeah.
But she's never brought it to the store.
Yeah.
We've never heard it.
So in other words, we don't know. All right.
It looks nice. It's really well made.
Next question. It's either Love 2000 or IOVE 2000. You discuss a lot of tube gear, but not much when it comes to tube rolling. What are your experiences with tube rolling? Any favorite tubes? Also, when you discuss tube gear, are you describing the way it sounds stock from the factory? Vilip.
Well, it makes absolutely no sense to tube roll with the stuff that we have because we can't guarantee it comes that way or that we can make it that way consistently. So with tubes, it's always stock factory. And for instance, with Macintosh, they ensure that they have a plentiful supply of the tubes that they voice the equipment with. So this way, every piece that comes out of the factory sounds exactly the same, more or less, like really, really, really close. There might be little minor differences, very, very minor, but you got to be like, you got to have super hearing in order to figure that out. And
So the other part of the question is tube rolling. Have you done tube rolling
Well,
before? And if so, what are your favorite
tons,
tubes?
but I'm not telling you anything because you can't get most of the tubes that I've used anymore. It's so hard to find them, and of course they vary from sample to sample depending on whether they're new or used or they've been treated, cryo treated or etc. Right? There's big differences between the tubes, and most of the ones you can't get anymore. Ones like 20, 30 years ago when I was tube rolling, you can't get that stuff. You just can't get it.
As a general rule, maybe the question is sort of hinting at this. As a general rule, do you prefer vintage NOS tubes, new old stock tubes versus what's generally available today? As a general rule of thumb. Not rule of thumb, but rather generally.
It's different because new stuff is designed to be it's designed to appeal to audiophiles. That's really the thing. I mean, if you're buying an expensive new tube, new manufacturer, like something like Emission Labs or something like that, it's not designed to be like, really robust and very reliable. I mean, it is, but really it's designed to extract or allow you to extract the maximum amount of information that tube can handle. And that's different from what it was like in the past, because the systems in the past did not have that expectation of detail and information retrieval. It was never designed that way, so the tubes, they react differently. New tubes are new tubes, and they do things that only new tubes can do. I use a mixture. Sometimes I use vintage when I can find them, and then sometimes I use modern stuff when I have Emission Labs in my tube system. And there's other good brands that have come along since I bought those Emission Lab tubes. And none of them are reasonably priced. I just bought like a Black Treasure KT88. It was like $500 for a pair.
Yeah.
$500 for a Chinese pair of Chinese tubes. Now, albeit they're good tubes. And the reason I had to buy them is because I had another set and I was missing, one of them went bad. So I had to buy two.
So I used to play with tube rolling when I was much younger. Because it was fascinating to me that they could make the sonic differences that they made. Having said that, perhaps I'm one of the few. I'm not one that believes that new old stock tubes like Telefunkens and so on are necessarily going to sound better than what is stock. Certainly in the 80s and 90s, and maybe even up to the early 2000s, a lot of contemporarily available tubes at the time were not that well made. For those who are younger, you will not remember this, but there was such a thing called the Cold War. And at the time, what tubes were available were pretty bad. Again, if you go back to the 80s and 90s, magazines like Absolute Sound and Stereophile, especially Absolute Sound, they used to document how badly, so CJs, for example, Conrad Johnson's would blow up. The tubes would just go. Audio Research, same thing. Jadis, same thing. It was almost like not if, it was when that would happen. That's generally because the tubes that we could get at the time were Russian or Chinese, and they were not well made. And so a lot of people would look for GE's, General Electric tubes or Telefunkens and so on, and then say, it's a lot better. And I think from a robustness standpoint, those earlier tubes were probably better. But then fast forward into the late 2000s, and certainly now, I mean, I can't remember the last time we sell lots of tube amps and tube preamps. And I can't remember the last time anybody really said that the tubes needed replacement because something blew. So I think today's tubes are certainly much better built. Now, sonically, as I say, it's been a while since I've tube rolled, and I all I can say is this. There is such a thing, a phenomenon called bias confirmation. So if you spend a lot of money on something, and this is true of anything in general as far as audio is concerned, you expect to hear differences, and you do, and a lot of times, it's a lot better. I would say I'm much more sanguine about this today. Anyway, let's move on because we have a lot of questions to get to. Okay, next question. Richard. For speakers in the range of $1,000 to $5,000 per pair, what is the sweet spot in terms of sound quality per dollar? Boy, that's tough.
$25,000. That's the sweet spot.
You said 1 to 5.
1 to 5,000.
So?
25,000.
There is no sweet spot there. That's ridiculous.
It's a personal. It's what you like, ultimately. It's unfortunate, but that's a reality. It's what you like. And we just in the store, and we're very fussy about curating our speakers. We already have 3 or 4 lines. You can imagine there are stores that have 5, 6, 7, 8
I'll give you an
lines.
example of why this question is ridiculous in most aspects. We
In
carry
a nice, loving way.
No, this is the stark plain truth. We carry Magnepan, and the LRS is a phenomenal speaker. And U.S. pricing, I guess, is what,
$650 or $650. Something like that, yeah.
We sell it for less than 1,000 Canadian dollars. And we always recommend some, slightly much more expensive amplifier to go with it in order for you to really get the most out of the speaker and for it to operate as it should. That's not the only speaker in that kind of price range, which necessitates that type of investment.
It's been 11 minutes.
Okay, so I'll give you another example. We used to carry KEF, and we had the LS50 in here, and now the new LS50 Meta. Both speakers require, similar investments in amplifiers to match along with it, and it's usually not the same price. So with the LRS, we would recommend at the minimum Hegel H95, because that's what we carry, specifically one to match with the LRS. But more recently, we've been recommending the H120, which is quite a bit more powerful, much more current delivery. And the LS50 is similar. So when you're looking at a speaker, what do you call the sweet spot? What are you matching it with? What room is it going in? It's too complex a question, phrased in such a simple way. It just doesn't work that way.
I think it's like a thing where people like to simplify it to the point where the answer to the question you give them doesn't really mean anything anymore, because the reality of the situation is that it's just far more complex than people think it is.
The real answer to that is whatever the maximum budget is. If it's $1,000 to $5,000, the sweet spot is $5,000. You will find more.
No. So I categorically disagree, because the LRS is now $5,000, and it's one of the best speakers I've heard.
Yeah, but you need an amplifier that's 3 times the price.
Anyway, let's move on.
That's not a sweet spot.
Let's move on.
That's a sore spot.
DW asks, if I have to pick one amp for solo piano reproduction, that's very interesting. Which amp is best suited for an already very neutral system? PS Audio BHK 250, M1200, or Parasound JC5? How much money do I have to spend for a streamer that beats the iFi Zen stream if I already have a PS Audio P15 in the mix? Thanks. Okay, so first question. Pick one amp for solo piano reproduction. And he's given 3 choices. PS Audio BHK 250, M1200, or Parasound JC5.
That's another loaded.
It's tough too.
Well,
let me give you my answer. And again, it's going to be general because I don't know your taste. But having been forced to play piano ever since I was 3, it depends on what you value in a piano. If you value tone and dynamics, I would say maybe the Parasound, because it's got effortless power. And it's got a pretty neutral character as far as that goes. Having said that, the BHK is even nicer in tone, but maybe not quite as dynamic. So which do you prefer? That's a good question.
So, because the BHK has tube front end.
Yeah.
It's a hybrid. And so there's something about having tubes in there and having second and fourth order harmonics that make it very pleasant and easy to listen to. Although, and then if you look at the JC5, it's Class A up to about,
up to a certain amount.
Yeah, up to a certain point.
7 or 10 watts.
Well, like 12 watts, maybe. I don't know. We always get the figure wrong, but it's something around that point, right? And that makes a big difference as well. So Class A has a certain purity about it that is hard to match. There's an effortless. That's why it's so effortless, because it's Class A.
Pick one. Holy moly.
Pick one? Oh my God! I would pick the amps that I use, but that doesn't count.
He's asking about these three.
But I wouldn't pick the M1200.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that. So either one of those other two would be more than adequate.
Okay, second part of the question. Sorry, I'm going to have to move this along because we have... how much do I have to spend for a streamer that beats the i5 Zen stream?
A lot more.
3 times to 5 times.
So give an example.
Well, we have the Inuus Zen Mini in the store, and that is 3 times the price. And I listened to it extensively, actually, over the last couple of weeks, just because it's been in systems and it was the only streamer in the system. And that is a good streamer, and it's 3 times the price.
Yeah.
That's without the power supply.
That's without the power supply. No, actually, we use it with the power supply, so it's 5 times the price.
It does come with the power supply. They're saying that you can buy...
Well, there's an LPS that you can get.
Yeah, upgraded power supply. Okay. Sharon Lamas, what would be your dream system?
I don't have a dream system.
Yeah.
Systems constantly evolve, and I have 3 systems.
I feel like working here makes it hard to have a dream system.
Yeah. That's a tough question. I'm fortunate. I can say that I have pretty much assembled what I really want. So my turntable, I'm looking at it, the clear audio statement. Alex will insert pictures. The speakers are the Wilson XVXs because I can't afford the WAMs. Electronics is where it gets a little bit tricky because I'm still trying to suss that out. There are times I really, really love the D'Agostinos, and then other times I listen to the Macintosh and I go, wow, this is fabulous. And then, of course, there's all kinds of other electronics that are out there that I have not had intimate experiences with. So that's analog. As far as digital, well, digital keeps evolving, but I love MSB. I was talking to a client the other day. He asked very specifically MSB or DCS. And I said, they're both really good. But the thing about MSB is that it always seems to play music. Vilip, any last words?
Well, for those who do follow our videos, you would know that I use a Shindo preamp, and so
sucks.
A Shindo preamp that he doesn't actually use.
No, that's not true. I haven't used it recently, but that's the preamp of choice, and so within the terms of the dream system, again, since it's constantly evolving, I've already had my dream system because I managed to find all these things that I liked. I tried them. Now I'm on to other things.
He likes big horn speakers that suck, and JBLs
that blow. And that suck. That blow.
Yeah, junk but loud. Okay, Steve Costello. Hello, Adrian. My name is Steve Costello. I really admire your life and business model. Thank you very much. And the people you have working at the store are truly number one. I just acquired a Macintosh MA252. Your review of the bigger brother 352. Any thoughts on the smaller one, the major sound differences between the two? Also, I have AudioQuest Water XLR cables, pretty expensive, around $700. Can you recommend a good digital coax cable? Okay, differences between the 352 and the 252.
Dynamics,
Power,
bass,
effortlessness,
drive.
Yeah. So just so I think our experience, at least my experience, is that the 252 is a fantastic amplifier, especially to drive smaller speakers, easy to drive speakers, small rooms, small form factor. It's wonderful. The 352 is not constrained that way. It has a lot more power. It can drive big speakers. It definitely has its own tonality and character. So if I could afford it, I'd buy the 352. But if I couldn't, and my budget limited me to the 252, it's a fantastic unit.
Yeah, the 352 has a bit of a bass hump too, down in
It's
about
got big ass.
yeah, but
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man? What do you mean by that?
about 100 hertz. You can actually, because it has an equalizer, you can turn it
I
down
like
a bit.
it. I wouldn't turn it down.
You would turn it up,
I love my Bias
but
model.
it has a bit of a bass hump right around 100 hertz, and it makes it fun. I would describe it as Macintosh's most fun amplifier, and I would describe the 252 as the sweetest sounding Macintosh amplifier. I think that highlights the differences between those two.
Can you recommend a good digital coax cable? He's already got the AudioQuest, so I
Well,
would
we
probably say
like
go
we,
with the
we like
AudioQuest.
the AQ stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you start with Carbon, and if you can afford coffee, buy coffee. If you can afford Diamond, buy Diamond. With the caveat that Diamond has a lot of detail that you might not find as desirable if your system is not as focused as it should be.
Okay, Baya013. Do you have experience with GaNFET amplifiers, so gallium nitride field effect transistor amps? I can't say I have. If I did, it was without knowing that it was using a GaNFET amplifier.
Well, there's only a couple
transistors.
manufacturers of them out there, and one of them is Peachtree, and they do have a model as a stereo GAN amp. And I did talk to Dale, our representative, and asked him if we could, he could send us a sample so we could listen to it. We're ostensibly Peachtree dealers, and he says he hadn't ordered one yet. So even the Canadian distributor or the sales agent hasn't brought one in. So it might happen in the future. It's very, very, very promising, but we'll have to, reserve final judgment for when we actually hear it.
Okay, Ben Cossie has two emails, so two questions. I'll boil it down to one. Which speaker brand has the best off-axis response without being a boring listen, 2 to 4,000 range? And I would like your personal pros and cons of Harbeth speakers. Is there a Harbeth model that you could live with forever? How do they stack up against what you sell in the store, comparably priced? So first, what speaker brand has the best off-axis response?
I don't listen to speakers off axis,
Yeah.
so I wouldn't know.
Does that mean like not in the center?
Yeah, so in other words, this if you look at the power response, you put the microphone off to the side, it still measures pretty flat. I would say if that was really important to you, omnidirectional speakers would do that, but depends on the price. And then the other thing is a lot of speakers that follow the research of Dr. Floyd Toole. So any of the Harman speakers, the Harman company speakers like JBL. Well, I don't know about JBL, but maybe certainly
So we're
Revel.
really talking about high frequency dispersion, and the better the tweeter is, usually the more directional they are. So it's a difficult question to answer. The best speaker I've ever heard in terms of dispersion, top end dispersion, is something like a Morrison Model 1, which is upward firing. Or
Yeah,
I've never
omnidirectional.
heard of the ohms.
Yeah.
MBL is supposed to be very good about that too, because it's got
Yeah.
omnidirectional.
So just so you know, there are pros and cons, as Vilip was trying to point out. When your speaker has very, very broad dispersion, it also means that your room becomes a much bigger issue. So that's something to be aware of. Second part of the question is Harbeth. Is there a Harbeth model that you can live with forever, and how do they stack up with what you sell in the store?
Yeah, it's called Spender BC1 or LS35A, either by Rogers or one of those associated companies, or even the modern version of it. Those are the best Harbeths I've ever heard.
Does that really count as Harbeth?
They're all about the same kind of thing. Harbeth actually managed to leverage that tradition into what is currently their set lineup. They're decent speakers. I always find them a bit boxy. I find that they have a bit of coloration that never really goes away.
I'm going to pass because I haven't heard a contemporary one.
We've had
Well, I think
various
that's true.
ones in
We've
here.
had- yeah, that's
We've had
true.
30s. I've heard 30s,
Yeah,
40s,
that's true.
HL5s,
That's true.
and
Yeah.
that's
I can't say 5 minutes. Okay, I can't say that there's one that I particularly like. Okay, let's move on. Sean, Could you guys talk a little bit about your preference for speaker setup, in particular? How far away do you set the listening position from the speakers? I've found sitting just outside an equilateral triangle sounds best, like 1 to 1 to 1, 1 to 1.1. So that kind of a setup is fairly common with Wilson audio setups. Wilson does recommend sitting approximately 1.1 to 1.25 times the width of your speakers, and we do generally do that. Depending on your room, of course, and depending on your speakers. Yeah, that's a good rule of thumb. Anything to add?
Yeah, that's what we do here. I mean, mostly I just plop the speaker down and hopefully it works.
Mark Seguin. Hi, Mark. Hi, Kathy. Power amps, plug into conditioner or directly into the wall? Thanks. Mark, by the way, is a great client and a friend. Friend. And Kathy, wonderful people. And when they come, I leave them talking to Vilip because he knows much more. All right, go ahead, Vilip.
The simplest answer is straight into the wall, especially if you have a dedicated line. That's what I would do. Because to actually put a power conditioner in between your current source and the amplifier, you need to have something very good.
Very good, yeah.
You know.
Yeah, you can certainly get improvements if your power conditioner is very good. But if you typically buy the wall strips and things like this, then I would say probably plug it straight into the wall. How's our time?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. Okay, last question. Will Bluesound Power Node pair well with Sonus Faber Lumina IIs by Padmesh? Power Node with Lumina IIs.
You can do better, but it's not bad.
Well, here's the thing about the Power Node. It actually is pretty powerful. Like the specs, belie what it actually does. It's actually a bit more dynamic and plays a little bit bigger than even the C700.
Specs are the same though, on paper.
Specs are exactly the same, but they don't play the same.
Yeah, they sound different.
They sound different. They scale differently.
Yeah.
The Power Node scales pretty well. It's quite impressive, actually.
Even with the threes, I've played the Power Node with the threes, and it sounded pretty decent, actually, which is very surprising to me.
So the bad thing is that, of course, I bought a C700. I didn't buy a Power Node.
Well, the C700 has that screen. Has a better DAC.
Yeah. All right, guys, we got to go. We'll have to do the next video. So thank you for watching. I appreciate all these questions. We'll do another Q&A, probably maybe even next week. So keep sending in the questions if you have them, and we'll see you next time. Adrian from Audio Excellence Canada, Vilip, Angus, and Alex. If you like the video, subscribe, turn on notification, turn on the likes, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye-bye.